Video game trends come and go, but some bring huge changes to gaming and couple of more recent ones have done so, and those are live service games and battle passes. Before we can understand battle passes and the live service model, we need to talk about what came before. Now, I have already made a video talking about microtransactions, so I'd recommend you go and check that one out beforehand, but long story short, microtransactions and DLC were a big change for gaming, whether you like it or not. Both let developers and publishers rank in more money in addition to the sales of the game, while giving something more to the players. Now, whether if these things were worth the money is another question, and that brings me to the problems of these models. DLC and stuff like season passes could and did divide a lot of player bases because not everyone wanted or could buy them, and that would lead into split player bases with people who had more content and those who didn't, and it could occasionally make it hard to find matches on new maps, for example. But this doesn't really apply to single player games because DLCs and expansions just add more content without affecting other players, just like the Witcher 3 story expansions. And there really are no player bases to be split with single player, it's literally in the name, it's single, just like you. A lot of multiplayer games in the early 2000s and middle 2010s used these DLC map pack tactics, mainly Call of Duty, Halo and Battlefield, and that did in fact split the player bases. Of course, it's not like you're going to wait half an hour just to find a match, but as far as I remember, it was a pain in the ass sometimes finding a DLC map in Battlefield 4 when I firstly bought it with all the DLC. I also feel like information about upcoming DLCs and expansions were a lot more clear back in the day compared to current times. Because of the live service model, you can't be that sure what you're going to get necessarily, because so many things can change. But honestly, I'm at least somewhat happy that I don't need to pay for additional content to play with my friends. Battle passes, another trend that Fortnite popularized in addition to the Battle Royale genre. And I know that Battle Royale was a thing before Fortnite, but it was the one game that really got the gears rolling. Now, what exactly are battle passes, asks a hermit who has been living under a rock for the past 4 years or so. Well, battle passes are most of the time paid passes that let you level up through tiers that have different unlocks from skins to in-game currency. Most of the time there is also a free battle pass that is essentially useless, because normally the majority of those tiers have nothing in them, which is obviously supposed to make you buy the paid version that has something in every tier. Even though in some rare occasions companies have made free progression systems akin to battle passes, like the Master Chief Collection, that has a free battle pass like unlock system where you can unlock stuff with tokens that you get by just playing the game. Something similar is in Doom Eternal as well. I don't think that battle passes are inherently bad, they give you more content to work for, but on the other hand you unlock stuff in a really linear fashion, and they are timed, so shit luck if you don't unlock all the tiers in the battle pass that you paid for, because you had real life responsibilities and didn't wanna treat the game like a second job. Something that Halo Infinite is hopefully starting a trend to fix, because in that game the battle passes won't expire, so you can unlock things without worrying that you're going to be left behind, which is great because you can get your money's worth without a hurry. But the battle pass progression can also be done badly. Yet again using Halo Infinite as an example, because there are problems with it. While Infinite's battle pass system is a step in the right direction, the lack of match XP and traditional progression system make the battle pass feel grindy, considering that you need 1000 XP per tier and you get XP only from challenges. But 343 has added a challenge that gives you XP after completing a match, which is just a band-aid solution until we can get a proper progression system at some point. Now, I mentioned that Fortnite was the game to popularize the battle pass trope, which inevitably led a lot of games following suit. Like Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Rainbow Six Siege, Valorant, Marvel's Avengers and modern Call of Duty titles, just to name a few. But the problem that I see here is that just like some of the games that I mentioned, Fortnite is free, which means that the company has to have a way to rank in money somehow, which in these situations is the buyable battle pass that has cosmetic only unlocks. And that is fine for free-to-play games, but some of these games you have to buy separately, and then if you want you can buy the Battle Pass, which just adds to the pile of money that you put into the game already. Like in Marvel's Avengers, the Battle Pass that they call Hero Challenge cards has the first pass as free, and the ones that come afterwards are paid for. But you can unlock enough points from the previous ones to buy the upcoming ones, which I guess is a good thing, but the fact that the game has options to buy those battle passes, tier skips and other microtransactions just irks me, because you have already bought the game beforehand. They even had pay to win boosters in the game that they luckily removed because of backlash. But if this game isn't proof of let's just monetize as many things as possible, then I don't know what is. But I have made my opinion clear about free-to-play and cosmetic microtransactions in my microtransactions video, which is that while I feel like cosmetic-only microtransactions are a lesser evil in paid games, I'm still not a fan of them at all, and I feel like if free-to-play games are going to have microtransactions in them, they should be cosmetic only, as long as they aren't predatory, which they definitely can be. Live service games or games as a service model is also one of those modern gaming trends that is really divisive, and it doesn't seem like it is slowing down anytime soon. Essentially, live service games are what the name says, games sold as services. They are either paid or free-to-play games that are meant to keep making money and staying somewhat popular long after release. And those games are doing that by switching paid DLC expansions like map packs for free content updates. But sadly, with free updates for the rest of the game's cycle, they need to make that money somehow. Which means, you guessed it, microtransactions. You didn't think that they were going away, did you? The microtransactions definitely aren't the only problem that live service games bring to the table, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Now, microtransactions in live service games are most of the time non-gameplay affecting, and I feel like that's at least something positive, even though I'm still not a fan of microtransactions in paid games or in games in general. But I do understand that games need to make money for free updates, and free-to-play games in general need to be able to get revenue, considering that making games is getting more expensive as they evolve. Of course, these microtransactions can be done quite badly. For example, in my microtransactions video, I talked about how Apex Legends had a cosmetic melee weapon in the game that pretty much costed around $170 if you tried to unlock it. And this happened with a free-to-play game, by the way. Another fuck up would have been Battlefront 2 before it was fixed. You could bypass things with money that could have affected gameplay like heroes and star cards, and without paying, you would have needed to grind a shit ton like a Red District stripper to get what you want. Also, a thing that could count into the games as a service model are stuff like subscription passes for games like World of Warcraft, which essentially is the first live service game ever. The game has membership cards that you buy in order to keep playing. The game got its first ever upgrade in 16th of January 2007, and it has had 8 expansions in total, and each has lasted around 20 months or so. Some newer trends like cloud gaming that is still in its infancy could be counted towards games as a service as well, considering that cloud gaming platforms are pretty much the definition of service games. Do I personally see cloud gaming rival other platforms like consoles or local PC gaming anytime soon? Not really, because pretty much you can have a really serious bottleneck with just your internet connection not being that great, and input lag can also be a huge problem. But that doesn't really mean that it wouldn't have its own user base, because maybe someone has a great internet and not that powerful of a PC, so they can really take an advantage from these services. If we get back to just the basics of live service games, they might not sound that bad. With free content drops and not that intrusive microtransactions, even though you bump into them every once in a while, free content sounds great on paper, doesn't it? But not so much when a lot of that content that should have been there since the start is coming on a later day. So it isn't really that different from DLC. Content packs that people disliked because at times it felt like delayed content being sold to you in fractions. But now that delayed content is free with a small hint of uncertainty. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the live service games might have lacked in content when released. and then some updates might have been unpredictable because they have been delayed. Some of these problems were really apparent with games like Anthem, Battlefield 5 and Sea of Thieves, which out of those 3 games is apparently good now, except when it released it lacked in content. And that is one of the problems with live service games, is that you need to wait for the game to get good. It is fine if games evolve over time because of player base's feedback, but the fact that the game is lackluster at launch and you need to wait a few months for the game to get good is tiring. But I feel like it is at least somewhat better late than never, because a bad game turned great is a good thing. Just look at what kind of glow up No Man's Sky got. Pretty much the whole game was sold on a lie and it lacked in content, but now after multiple updates, it is apparently really good. I feel like these half-finished games do reflect the state of the industry. Games being released at unfinished or lacking states, and maybe, just maybe, fixed after release. A really recent example of a game being quite shit because of lack of content, technical issues and feeling rushed is Battlefield 2042. More like Battlefield 2042 reasons not to buy this game, am I right? The game just seems like the definition of let's just throw shit at a wall and see if we have to wipe it off afterwards.
What the f is this?
Battlefield 2042 is finally out, and it's a f***ing mess.
What the fuck is this?
So just...
Aircrafts going up walls, planes bouncing off of buildings, tanks going into the void. This game has bugs on top of bugs.
Hey, Dad, let's get a medic over here!
The only good thing I have heard from the game is the Portal mode, which lets you experience remastered maps and weapons from the older Battlefield games. And it was made in a little bit more than a year. And it's better than the fully fledged game. Now, I'm not a game developer and I'm pretty sure that COVID had something to do with this game's problems, but how do you fuck up this badly? Another thing that is heavily disliked about live service games is the aesthetic change that a lot of these games go through. For example, Call of Duty must be the worst offender here. Oh look, a militaristic looking shooter, then a couple of months later, Ghostface and Jigsaw decide to join in on the fun, and then these payday looking motherfuckers show up. These wacky costumes completely shy away from the original look of the game, and I also found this article that was released 2 months before the game came out, so that was a fucking lie if the article is true. I personally don't mind wacky customization in games where I might not care about immersion that much. Like Call of Duty for example, I play those games for fun and not for accuracy, unlike some other games like Rising Storm 2 Vietnam. But I do understand that these do turn people off from these games because the style of the game isn't consistent anymore. Just imagine wanting to play a realistic looking military shooter and some asshole is running around with a pink anime skin. COD definitely isn't the only game with this problem, just look at this event from Rainbow Six Siege. Yeah, it is a special event at a certain time of the year, but those skins stay. I think that these events are a good addition because they add something special, but they break the look of the game and they add content to the game that is then partially taken away. Other games on the other hand can work with these crazy cosmetics and events, like Overwatch. I mean, the game has fallen a lot from the hype that it once had, but the cosmetics and events worked with the cartoonish and special style that the game has. When I was playing it, I used to really enjoy the Halloween Junkerstein Revenge event a lot, and oh man, that Mercy skin.
Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy?
Now, even with all the criticisms against live service games like microtransactions, wacky skins and uncertain updates, these games do really well. Mainly because they do get updated quite regularly with new content. Rainbow Six Siege is still alive and it came out in 2015. Man, time really flies by, doesn't it? Fortnite and COD Warzone are still kicking while they aren't exactly that old, and it would be dumb not to mention GTA Online's success. I don't personally like it that much because if you don't play the game constantly, you are going to be left behind and are pressured to buy money in the game in order to buy new stuff from the updates, some that you need in order to advance through the quote-unquote story. But the game to this day is still doing great, and the game has sold over 155 million copies by 2021, and it still has a loyal player base, so the content is definitely still hooking people. If I backtrack for a second and talk a little bit more about the old DLC model versus the newer live service model, I feel like both have their advantages and disadvantages. The newer free content updates are great in the sense that they won't split the player base, and free content is always nice. But older paid DLC just felt like there was more incentive for the devs to make better content with DLC. You could say that there was a carrot on a stick that motivated them. An example that I'm going to give is Black Ops Zombies. I recently bought Black Ops 3 and all the DLC on sale just for the zombies so that I can play it with my friends. And that game has 15 zombie maps in total. Sure, 8 of those are remasters, but there's still more great content. Then Black Ops 4, a live service game, has 8. Yeah, that's a huge drop off. Then afterwards came Black Ops Cold War, that was a live service game as well, and it had 5 zombie maps. So it went from 15 to 8 to 5. You see what I'm getting at here? And I guess you could make the argument of quality over quantity, but that has gone down as well, so there's definitely something going on here. Another iffy live service game would be Destiny 2, that came out in 2017. It's a game that I do actually like. But it is a really weird case because while it is a live service game, it does have huge expansions that you pay for, while at times removing older content, like the original base campaign and the Warmind, Curse of Osiris and Forsaken expansions. And that is kinda understandable because the game at the moment is around 70GB on PC, and it would be closer to 200GB like Modern Warfare 2019, if they kept everything in, but removing older content is still kinda scummy, considering that you paid for those expansions. Live service games and battle passes are modern gaming trends that do create some issues. Sure, it is nice to possibly have long support for games, but the linearity and grindiness of battle passes and the lack of content and monetization up the ass in some of these live service games are a huge turnoff for a lot of people. For me, they definitely are a hindrance, but things could be worse, and considering that games are becoming more expensive as time goes on, their prices could rise far more if we didn't have microtransactions. I mean, some current gen games prices have risen to €70, so they could rise even more within the next 5 to 10 years, if we live to see that day. The uncertainty of the gaming industry is a worrying one, but considering how vast it is, there is still a ton of good things going around, like a lot of indie games that aren't tainted by the corporate greed of some of these studios, and games that don't have a sense of FOMO or fear of missing out. And I guess the only thing we can do is to push back on the bad side effects of the current trends and live with them until things change. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays depending on your time zone. Man, it was really fun to make this video and I'm quite proud of it. So I would appreciate if you would leave a like, subscribe and comment because I need some validation. But of course I'm not forcing you to, you're your own being, you have free will, you'll do it if you want to. Now, considering that I like making videos about gaming trends, my next video about these trends might as well be about video games and NFTs because Ubisoft's recent fuck up with them is just excellent. And I really wanna piss off some crypto bros, so that's going to be interesting. But for now, I hope you enjoyed, and see you guys on the next video.